I think it's also like the different time zones that have maybe, made people the made it difficult for people to convert. So let's see how that pans out. But nonetheless, I'm so happy that y'all are here, and I do want to respect your time. So we will get started until many others are yet to join. So, yeah, I just wanted to introduce myself. I am Saloni Sapare, and I have been a sports psychology consultant for a while now, but most importantly, I have been a chess player for even longer. I started playing chess when I was 6 years old, and over time, gathered a lot of experience in various different competing environments, and I achieved my Women International Master title. And during this journey, that's when I understood that psychological components are so important and so um, not explored enough. So that's what made me come into this area of exploration. So that's a bit about me. And I was just hearing from Deeksha what gets her here. But Ansa, if you'd like to share what gets you here, I'd be very happy to hear that.
Sure, Saloni. First of all, thanks for giving me an opportunity to ask the questions.
Of course.
I have a 14-year-old son who's been
Mm-hmm.
playing chess for almost like 8, 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
So he started chess out of his passion
Okay.
after seeing the chess club at his elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like he had that passion towards that game, and
Okay.
it kept kind of pulling him to the all the clubs possible nearby.
Yeah.
We used to take him to the public libraries. So currently he's been at like 2000 rated.
Mm-hmm.
So we have private coaching available for him, and he is also taking some group lessons led by some grandmasters here in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the main issue I'm facing right now is since it's his passion, he's putting, I would say, like more than 100%. Um, however, his skill level,
Mm-hmm.
according to his grandmaster coach, he's
Mm-hmm.
saying that he should be like at least a national master by now. So
Okay.
what's pulling him down is like whenever he goes to the tournament, if he gets a good start, we
Mm-hmm.
have kind of confidence that he is going to have a good tournament.
Right.
But if he has a bad start, it's very difficult for him to come out.
Right.
So that's one thing. The second thing is like uh, the problem happens like whenever he play lower rated players,
Mm-hmm.
like if he lose to a lower rated players, definitely the he's not able to come out of that loss immediately.
Mm.
I tried so many different things by reading about it, like by taking him for walks or like making me feel like it's okay. You have, if suppose if it is 7 rounds in a tournament, I'll say like the first round it's okay. You still have time
Mm-hmm.
to come back up. So I
Yeah.
tried to motivate, but somehow it's not working. The third point is
Mm-hmm.
if he continuously have some good tournaments,
Mm-hmm.
for example, like 2, 3 tournaments in a row,
Mm-hmm.
so he set high expectation about himself.
Okay.
So he will count all the. He is a data person. So what he does is he take dumps all the previous tournament data and
Okay.
figures out like what is the top points comes in. So what
Mm-hmm.
he will set himself, what is the possible max I can achieve,
Right.
and he will set that goal in mind and go. And if the first round doesn't happen as he expected,
Mm-hmm.
he'll have that frustration building up.
Right.
He'll go with more frustration to the second, and
Mm.
then it will be a disaster. So we tried so many things. We told like you have to come back, we cannot withdraw you from tournaments.
Yeah.
That's not a good attitude because you have to fight back.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it works. At this point I'm in a situation like he really needs some help. I'm not able to help him,
Yeah.
and I don't know what to do. Yeah,
No,
I think
thank you for
I bombarded with so many questions.
that is completely fine. I just want to, add to this saying it's very fine to have all of these questions. And as you
Mhm.
were saying, I was also taking notes because all of this is also good learning points for me. Not that, many parents don't say that, but it's always good to know what each parent is bringing to the table, what their unique challenges are as a parent. So, as
Mhm.
I was noting down, and even the questions that have been asked, I think the main themes that have been observed are how can I be more calm? How can I be more supportive to my child? How can I, between those games when I am there with my child and I can see that my child is feeling really bad, not able to recover from a loss. What are the right things that I should say? So, those are all very, very valid questions that come. And then from a children, like the child's perspective, they also want to know how can they be more organized with their thought, how can they manage time pressure, decision making fatigue, how can they manage the fear of higher rated opponents. So there's so much going on, and that's exactly why sports psychology is so interesting, right? Because the whole crux of that is that you can be technically very strong. You can be at a very good place for you to perform well. You're working on your skills in your training. You're also very like active. You don't miss any days of training. But then when it comes to perform, something lacks. There's some
Yeah,
lapses, right?
exactly. Yeah,
And
yeah.
if the way I say it, many people are immediately like, yes, that's exactly what is happening. And that's good that we are here.
Mhm.
Because the issue is not technical knowledge. The issue is just how to retrieve that knowledge when there's pressure situation. That's the whole game.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Because I had a long conversation with his coach. So he is saying like, if he gets a good position, he
Mm-hmm.
will immediately win.
Mm-hmm.
But if he gets a bit of a kind of not so great position,
Mm-hmm.
he has the skills to fight back.
Mm-hmm.
However, what he does is he admitted the defeat.
Mm-hmm.
He thinks like he cannot come back,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a loss for him.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's get started because I want to address multiple things that have been, told by parents. So these are some things that you and Diksha have already listed right now, or maybe these are something that are, different and in addition. But nonetheless, I hope that whatever I'm about to say, share will benefit um, our discussion today. Okay. So one of the first questions that I, got was how can players stay calm and think clearly in those critical moments? That's where they want to help their child, but they don't know what to do. Firstly, let's understand where this pressure is coming from, right? This pressure is basically coming from that place that is judging their performance as it happens. So there's one part that is fully engaged in playing. There's one part that fully understands that, okay, these are the right moves, chess specific thinking. And this is also where chess is so interesting because unlike other sports, both these components happen in our mind. Ours is a mental sport. So it becomes increasingly difficult to make that distinction as to, is this my chess thought? Is this my personal thought? And then understanding that distinction, which I like to say thinking self and doing self, that is what gets even more challenging. So when you think about it like that, you realize that, hey, the situation is itself not that difficult. What is difficult is me not understanding which part of me is getting activated right now. So as you think about that more and more, you realize that I need to learn how to separate my thoughts. I need to be more self aware. I need to be more understanding of what is my thinking self, as I like to call it, and what is my doing self, which is the chess expert. So, coming back to that, there are some ways in which you can manage it, right? Firstly, when there is emotional activation, when there is that component where you are very emotionally charged, strong decision making cannot happen in that because emotions, on a very biological level, have also a physiological reaction. Think about it. When you feel like you're crying, or like you are crying or you're feeling really sad, doesn't our chest tighten up a little bit, or there's like choking in the throat because we cannot speak? Or when we're very happy, don't we feel very light or just like very energetic? When we are excited, we feel like, okay, ready, let's do it. Considering all of that, it is so important to understand that when the body enters that state of readiness, it will not be at a point where it's thinking clearly. Because simply from the evolution point of view, activation of the body means fight or flight. And fight or flight is not the time to think, right? So, a lot of people recommend do breathing exercises, meditate, XYZ. But what happens because of that is that what's the reason behind it? Why should the child do this? This is the reason that as much as possible, you have to bring your levels to the baseline and understand, okay, this is what is happening, and that will give me a clearer picture to understand what I should think at or look at. So far, are we with like each other? Are there any questions about what I was saying? And if you're not in a position to unmute, you can just send me a thumbs up or whatever works. Okay. Okay. That's great. Lots of thumbs up coming my way. Okay. So, when that self awareness is built, another thing that people ask me is that, the recovery piece that we were discussing, that, okay, how can I recover quickly within the game? Let's understand again the basis behind that. What happens is that when there is an emotional hijack, when there is, you understand that, oh, I have just made an error. I have just made a mistake that is not going to give me the position that I desire. That's exactly where two streams of thought bifurcate in your mind. One stream of thought, the logical one, is like, okay, considering the given situation, what's the best I can do? And then this other stream of thought immediately starts to evaluate your performance as a player. The whole identity of you as a player starts getting questioned. Oh my God, I made this mistake. Does that mean I'm not a good player? Am I incapable of making good decisions? Do I not understand chess as much as I think I do? When these two things bifurcate, it is that point where you need to make a decision. Which one are you putting your attention to? And because it's a stress situation, attention is already narrowed. So, because of that narrowed attention, you can't focus on both. You have to choose. And that choice often always goes in the direction of the emotional tilt because emotions feel so overwhelming, right? You're in that zone, you've realized you've made a mistake, you're feeling, I don't know, anger, sadness, frustration, whatever it may be. And that fully takes you away from actually the direction that you're supposed to go to, which is okay, this has happened. This is the reality of the new position that's in front of me. And they forget them to ask themselves a very crucial question. This move that I'm about to play, is this the demand of the position or is this a personal demand that I'm trying to satisfy? When you ask this very crucial question and sit with it, actually sit with that question for a second or two, you realize that, hey, sometimes they say that, oh, I was just in the zone. I felt like my attack was great, but it actually was not that great. I was just thinking that. Why does that happen? Because there's a personal demand that says, I must attack, I must follow through. I have made this decision. What does that tell me about myself if I'm not following up on this move? Right? So that's the personal demand. But if they can be objective, pull themselves back, and also say, okay, I started out with this attack, but clearly I don't have the resources anymore to follow through. That takes a certain level of maturity through a series of questions to arrive at that, okay, so what I can't attack anymore? If I truly am a master of the game that I'm playing, the skills that I'm playing, it's okay to pivot. It's the skill that requires me to pivot. not a reflection of my own abilities or, quote unquote, my incapability to attack. That distinction is very important. That's also why sports psychology is so important because it creates a strong self identity. Who you are as a person, separate from the sport. And within the sport, understanding I am not my moves, I am not my results or my rating. I simply am the carrier of the chess skills. And when I execute that, everything else is just a product of that. So far, are we good together? Are there any follow up questions or any thoughts as I was saying that? Feel free to write it in the chat, or if you want to unmute, I'd be very happy to, hear you. I'm just going to wait like 5 to 10 seconds more. Okay. I also see like many other players, like people have joined. So just wanted to say hi to all of y'all as we progress. One of the next questions that I also received, which was much in number, was how can my child stay motivated? How can they be consistent despite ups and downs? This is so interesting because motivation is such a hype word, right? Everyone these days wants to be motivated. There's access to social media, there's access to the internet, which makes this culture of no matter what, just go, go, go as a culture that's attractive. And sure, it is, but they forget the fundamental basis of motivation upon which it operates. The definition of motivation is the direction and intensity of effort. What does effort mean? Actions. But most people confuse it and say, I don't, quote unquote, feel motivated. You see the discrepancy between that. When you interpret motivation as a feeling that I have to feel a certain type of way to take action, of course it's not going to happen. Because tell me one thing, consider two separate occasions where you are happy. Okay. Maybe your child made a greeting card for you. And the other is you just had a really amazing food dish. Okay. Both these situations make you happy. But will you feel the same amount of happiness in both? Probably not. There are differing levels of happiness. So then, if an emotion that's desirable, which is happiness, also doesn't come in the same level of intensity, how do we expect motivation to be felt the same way each day? Logically, it doesn't make sense, right? So then, when you start understanding the true meaning of this definition, which is the direction and intensity of effort, you realize this. First, action needs to be initiated and that sustains the motivation. So it's the age old question of did the egg come first or the hen, right? So, well, for this question, we do have the answer. Does the action come first or the feeling? The action comes first, which is where there are some suggestions like, okay, if you feel like, oh, I see the chess book, there's a chessboard, but I don't feel like it, actually just put yourself on the board. Actually, just like set up the board, just skip that initial phase of, I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it. But once the position is set up, you will by default start thinking. Because a chess player, no chance that there's a board in front of you and there's a position set up and you don't think about it. That's just like against the grain of who you are as a chess player. And try this. If your child is saying, oh, they're not feeling like it, just say okay. And as you're saying okay, also set up the board or tell them, or let's just give them like chess.com and open it and give them a puzzle maybe. You'll realize that they suddenly are looking at it, they're solving at it, and then bring in or suggest them things to do for themselves. This is how motivation is first generated action towards, and then the feeling sustains itself. Is the concept of motivation a bit more clearer as I was explaining that? Does anyone have any questions on that? This is a very interactive environment, so please do feel free to, speak up and like share your thoughts. I would love to benefit as much as possible to everyone in this meeting. Okay. So another thing, thank you, Hansa. Thank you, Neha. So as I was explaining also the consistency piece, one of the major things that has been observed in terms of consistently showing up every day is what you value that you get out of showing up, right? For example, let's take two considerations. A child shows up to like the running ground every day, like where they have to exercise. Each day they show up, they are greeted by their friends, they're greeted by their coaches, and after they complete the daily exercise that has been prescribed to them, their coach praises them, or their coach gives them I don't know, a thumbs up, a pat on the back. Friends are also helpful. That's the first scenario. Second, the coach only rewards when they have an extremely excellent run, but on other days, it's not really like valued so much. It's like a very dry sort of preparation. And it just doesn't have to just do with the coach. It also has to do with maybe the parent asking immediately, oh, how much time did you run after a practice session, as opposed to, did you have fun with that in the first case? You see, there's not a clear reward to the timing or the output in the first case scenario. Learning is the whole goal, which shapes the identity of the player or the athlete. Sometimes, and most of the times, this happens unknowingly because all of us are also learning. I'm sure all chess parents here and those who will watch this later are first time chess parents. So don't put so much pressure on you all if you all don't know these answers. It's completely fine. But these discussions, that's what helps us pivot into, directions that will help us be better supportive. So coming back to what I was saying, asking the right questions is so important. So pivoting from, when they come out from a game, immediately asking, oh, like, did you not see this move? Especially if they're on digital board, which very very naturally happens. You're not wrong to ask that. You have questions because you are not playing. So of course, as you were watching, you were like, oh, this could be done, this could be done. But that takes away the focus on first. Did you enjoy the game? No matter they win or lose, when the first question is, did you enjoy the game? Did you have fun? What did you learn? How was this different than maybe the last tournament's game? These are good reflective questions which develops thinking players. And you want players who think for themselves. Because those who think see value to show up again. When learning is the criteria, when mastery is the goal, and not like ratings, titles, norms, prizes, recognition, the learning itself is so fulfilling for them that they don't need any of these additional things to sustain themselves, to show up every day. So, even during training, when they view themselves not as the output of their training, that, okay, today I did 5 hours of chess opening. Today I solved the woodpecker method so fast that it is just the most insane thing that I've ever done. As opposed to saying, I am someone who shows up. I am someone who values learning every day. You see how that can be understood rather as a core identification of the value of learning and not the output of learning. Again, I'd like to pause and check in because there's just so much to be discussed.
I would like to agree 100% to this point because I have at that place because
Mhm.
I never been into a playing hall
Mhm.
as a player to figure out what kind of pressure the kids are going through.
Yeah,
So in the initial years, I used to ask this question, and it was literally kind of deteriorating my kids' progress.
yeah.
So then I also tried to not being judgmental, like
Mhm.
by asking direct questions. I used to make it a little bit more subtle to make him feel better about it once he come out.
Mm-hmm.
So over the years, I also kind of started reading him. I know, seeing his face itself, I know if he won the game or he drew the game or he lost the game.
Yeah.
So I started taking cues out of those instead of asking the judgmental questions. That definitely helped. That
Yeah.
made a positive change, I would say.
Thank you for sharing that answer.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any other thoughts or additions to what we were discussing? Not an issue. Let's continue. So, one of the next things that I wanted to talk about was so many of you asked, how, okay, Saloni, you are telling us everything that we shouldn't do. What should we do instead? The very, very first question, right? And please have this or like approach what I'm about to say with the thought process of, okay, this is not an attack on what you all are doing right now. This is simply a discussion that opens up to various ways to support our child. My first question to all parents is, do you think truly, and having gotten feedback from your child, that they feel psychologically safe to fail and not be worried of any repercussions when they come and tell you about this failure? And we as parents, I mean, y'all as parents, I'm not a parent yet, but I can imagine that y'all as parents, of course, want your children to feel safe enough to come and tell y'all about the failure. But a lot of times it is lost in translation. Actually asking them one day, like imagine after this, if you go and ask your child, hey, do you think you feel comfortable fully to come and talk to me about your failure? That's a very good first step. Because what you're asking them is, am I a psychologically safe space for you? And imagine the repercussions of that also in multiple domains, right? Because chess is just a part of their life. They're also, someone who goes to school, perhaps goes to college. In the future, they might run their own businesses. They might be employees at a place. They also will have their personal life. And we know there's successes and failures everywhere, no matter where we go. So the psychological safety is not just for the game. It is as a concept how you make or provide the space to your child. That's a very, very good first step to ask. Okay, do you feel that way? The next point of discussion would also be self reflective practices that you all do as parents. This is so important because a lot of times we work on reactions instead of responses. Response is well thought out. Reaction is almost immediate. And though it comes from a place of support, sometimes the response, when you think about it, might be different than what your reaction is. For example, when you compliment your child, you mean well, obviously you do mean well, but are you complimenting the effort or the learning behind it? Or is your praise worded such that it values the output? For example, you found such great moves in this game versus, wow, you just beat a 2000 rated player. That's so cool. Both of these are praises, but they give very different meanings to your child. This is just something to think about. Maybe you all are already doing that. And like I said, these are points of discussions that are aimed at creating that supportive environment. But this is something to think about. How are you wording your praise? How is your response, if you take a minute, different from your reaction? Another thing that many players, parents unconsciously do, knowing or unknowingly, is get into comparative standpoints. The players are already doing that, right? Trust me, each player, we are not escaping that comparison, especially when you see someone of your same age, more or less the same rating bracket, do well, and in the same tournament, you're not doing so well. The players are already, messing up their mind by thinking that. When you ask that question, or when you even by mistake mention that this person's doing well, and you might not even be like, oh, why are you not doing well like these guys are doing? But even just the mention of that can give the message that, oh, you're also observing the growth of this person, which means, is my parent thinking that my growth is not at par? Is my parent thinking that I am not as capable as this other person? I actually say comparison is good, but how you again frame it is so important. When you say, I think this person has so much to share about their journey and their growth. What do you feel about us going and talking to their parent or their child to just learn more? Again, you're acknowledging that, okay, this person's doing well, but your approach now is to learn about their process, not about the fact that they have achieved XYZ or they're doing well. That's the output. But what are they doing differently behind the curtains, in their systems, in their training process? That's worth learning. Are we on the same page so far? Do any of y'all have any questions? Like I said, please feel free to unmute or ask any follow-up questions that you might have. And if you disagree, even feel free to disagree. I'd be very happy to have that discussion.
Um, I guess I may have some kind of different thought on it.
Okay.
So right now I'm feeling like chess has become very competitive. Even
Okay.
the kids who used to be best buddies back in the years, once they get into that competitive space of chess, right?
Mm-hmm.
I felt like they are not ready to share anything, what
Mm-hmm.
they are doing, or what kind of private lessons they are getting. So it's like even I tried that from my side. I felt like sometimes kids need to analyze games together or kind of do more group related activities in the chess space. But somehow it's very difficult to get that kind of a space. Maybe like competitiveness, I don't know.
Yeah.
Or maybe, yeah, I don't know how to make it happen for my kid either.
Okay. I hear you. And guess what? It's okay. You tried. You and your child tried asking, and there was no response. Okay. Is that
Mhm.
the only avenue for growth?
Nope.
Is that the only way for your child to figure out, okay, how else can I analyze? Understanding, and also when your response becomes like this, right? Oh, this person is guiding, like guarding their secrets. This person's not sharing, as opposed to, well, we tried, nothing works
Mm.
out. Okay, let's find a different way. Honestly,
Yeah.
not taking it so seriously works. When your child sees that this was not as important, it was worth a try, but it didn't happen. Okay, so what? Let's move on. When your child sees that, okay, learning does not need to be so much of a pressure situation and just a part of the process, they also try to take it as, uh, I don't want to say not seriously, but also not seriously in a way. I hope that helps.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. I understand. Yeah. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah.
Is any,
Yeah,
yeah,
Saloni. Sorry. First of all, apologize for joining in late. I
that's
got pulled
okay.
into something else. I don't know whether you've covered it, but a quick question, right? So, the last 10-15 minutes when you covered, you talk about not pushing your child, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
letting them take their speed. Sometimes they need more time compared to others. I understand all of that. And
Sure.
obviously, I think most parents do realize maybe not easy to follow, but we do try to keep in
Yeah.
touch with that, right? But there is the small nuance, right? Sometimes you have to identify that they need the push, right?
Okay.
So for me and as a parent, I think it's the most difficult part is to realize which side are you on, where he is giving it at 100% and you just need to support him, it's a bad phase, or is it that he's taking the lighter way or the easy way out? And not most of us parents are chess parents, right? So we
Yeah.
understand a little bit, but obviously it's very difficult. Most of the time the child will come out from a game, say, I made a blunder.
Yeah.
and he took advantage, and you cannot go beyond a certain point, right? So
Yeah.
how do you differentiate when you just need to play the support, keep quiet, it's that kind of phase, or is it the phase when he really needs you, when you need to uh, I don't know, not push him, but you need to support him in a different way. You make him realize that you need to show up, you need to do this differently. So how do you differentiate that? And I know there might not be a silver bullet to it, but yeah.
Thank you for asking that. And I really appreciate you thinking in this way, sir, because you're right. I'm not saying that don't push your children, but just be different about how you might be doing it. First question that you asked was, how can I differentiate that? Or when do I go into the support, keeping quiet role as opposed to being an active participant? Honestly, just ask your child, hey, I want to be there for you. What is the best way you think I can support you right now? Sometimes asking this question also generates that accountability in them, also generates that feeling of autonomous behavior that, okay, my parent is asking me how I want to be supported. That's very cool. Okay, this is what I want. And if they like what you've asked or they're like in that zone, they'll immediately start telling you, this happened, this happened, this happened. And sometimes they just want to hear. Another way to approach this is also to just be smart about the questions you're asking, right? I'm not saying don't talk to them or keep quiet and just observe. Sometimes asking the right questions that, okay, this game that you played, I can see that you're upset. What could you do differently next time that will make this a little better for you? Instead of getting into directly advice giving, you encourage them to find their own solutions. And this has nothing to do with age. Research has found out the more you start creating thinking players from the beginning of their journey, the more confident they become to navigate their decisions with age. So it might seem like, oh, my son is like, I don't know how old your child is, but it might seem like my child is just like 7 or 8. Does he have the capacity to do that? Fair question, but at least encourage them to think for themselves. If you think that they need help, ask, can I step in and advise or like potentially offer a suggestion? When you take permission and almost start treating them like their own individuals, that can lead to a big difference. What do you think?
Absolutely, Saloni. Just to answer one question that you asked, I have two boys, 10 and 13,
Okay,
right?
okay.
So I do see the differences and the similarities
Yeah,
among them, right? And both of them are very different personalities, let me put it that way, right? So you
yeah.
have to deal with each one based on what it is. But sorry, my question, it had a different angle to it, right?
Okay,
Obviously, we do try to get them to talk. My thing is, we all have phases in life, and it's not only about the kids, but
sure.
it's more difficult to understand the phase where he's actually putting it in his 100%, and there are phases where he's not putting his 100%, right? And y- with other sports it's a little easier to make out, I feel.
Okay.
And
How
chess
so?
being the kind of sport it is really difficult to make out whether he's giving his 100% or he's like kind of taking a layback. And with experience you realize there are some phases in life where you need to give more than the 100%, right? So say for example you're going to a smaller tournament and giving less than 100%. Again, though it's not fine, it's still okay, you can live with it. But if you know there's a bigger tournament coming up and you want them to realize that this is a platform where you should use,
Okay.
that's where my question was more, right? So how do you identify whether it's the 100% or 50? Is there a way to identify, first of all, sorry, before how to identify?
Yeah, I think this realization that you said that, okay, this is that opportunity where, I have to give more than my 100%. And like I said, if it gets lost in translation, please forget, like, don't wait to correct me or stop me. But this is how I understood your question, and that's how I'm answering. Um, when the question first becomes, are they also realizing that? You realize that as their
Correct.
parent, are they realizing it?
Correct.
Because no matter how much you want, and it's the reality for any person, honestly, not just our children, if they don't want to do it, they'll not do it. If they don't realize it, they'll not do it. Because it needs to come from a very good s- viewpoint. Now, as parents, you can ask those guiding questions that can build that understanding for them, which is why let's like if you want to share some things that your children might say, that can also give us good examples. So what tells you, or when you ask them, are you genuinely giving your 100%? What might they say? When you just ask an honest question to them.
So again, and these days kids are very different, right? So if you go back a few years, I think kids would answer it differently. At least
Mm-hmm.
that's my point of view.
Okay.
But today, kids, sometimes they will say, yes, I'm giving my 100%, even though they might not be. Okay,
Okay.
because they don't want to get into that conversation with you. They're much smarter than kids used to be a few years back, right? They know where things are leading.
Yeah.
And there'll be other times when they'll say, no, I don't want to do it today. Today, I want to go out and play cricket rather than do chess. And that's fine with me also. Again, like I
Okay.
said, right? It's fine. So the risk that parents these days carry is you want to push in a good way, but you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to cross a line. And
Okay.
that's the most important thing, according to me. And I've been through a different phase with one of my boys,
Mm-hmm.
where they started chess. In a few months they got demotivated. They dropped chess completely,
Mm-hmm.
completely as in completely. They wouldn't even friendly play it at home.
Mm-hmm.
They dropped it for a couple of years, and then they again themselves them he himself wanted to come back and start playing. So, and that's what we encourage. So when he didn't
Yeah.
want to play, we just left it. You don't want to, don't play it. Go play whatever you want to play. It's while the other son continued playing. So
Yeah.
again, but when you see a, as a parent, it's difficult to do when you see a potential and then you don't see the kid realizing that potential. It's very difficult to stop yourself. And again, that maybe that's the wrong thing to do, but it's very difficult to do that. And
I under
sorry, I
100%.
don't mean to hijack the whole session, but
No,
yeah.
no. I am not aware because I didn't ask anyone else, but maybe people are also relating to what you're saying. So don't feel bad. And of course, I'll go back into answering the common questions. But just to finish what you're saying, you're 100% right. That's your area of discomfort. Question then becomes, how are you sitting with that discomfort? That you can see the potential in your child, but the reality is, yes, we can like talk, but how are we talking? Is it a reaction? Is it a response? Is there a different way that we can approach this? Growth happens everywhere, right? We are, like I said, I'm not a parent yet. So maybe you all are already excellent parents. I can only support you from the sports psychology perspective for chess and performance. These are my 2 cents. But sometimes just reflecting and having that conversation can be a big difference creator.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And
I
thank you
tried
so much,
out.
Sanandi.
Yeah.
I tried out some ways in this kind of scenarios with my son. So one approach I took is like, for example, if he's going to a not so kind of competent tournament, he used to do good actually in terms of the outcome of that tournament. He'll
Mm-hmm.
have good result. So if he go into a highly competitive tournament, I used to tell him, I'm not looking at the actual result you are being bringing. Like if he's playing a 7 rounds or 7 games, I'm not asking you to show me 5 out of 7 or 6 out of 7. So if you are playing a higher rated play opponent, if you can show me the outcome of your game, like at some point you think you outplayed your opponent, that's
Okay.
good for me. So that is a one step ahead uh, from what state you are in. So I was not encouraging him to win all the games or pressurizing him to win all the games. Instead, slowly showing me the progress was okay with us. So that's kind of helped to little bit alleviate the tournament pressure. And
Mm-hmm.
then he started kind of getting the confidence to play higher rated opponents. And he started getting draw with the higher rated opponents.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's also a good point for me to intervene because this is what exactly I was saying. We don't realize the message that we're trying to communicate because the higher rated standpoint should not be the one in question in the first place. And I'm not saying that, oh, this is right or wrong. This is my perspective, which the players I have worked with, I'm working with. This has changed the entire way they approach this a lot. when you look at it as I'm playing against this position, it doesn't matter who's sitting against me. It can be 1,000 rated player, 1,400, Magnus Carlsen, does not matter. I'm playing against this position on the board. I value my chess skills. I do not value what my opponent brings to the table because it is not in my control. When you remove the whole opponent consideration in the whole place and you look at progress as internal, right? You don't look it from a comparative standpoint. It's not, oh, against higher rated opponent, am I drawing or am I doing XYZ? As opposed to, how has my game quality improved since the last game? How has my game or move decision making been different than what I was doing before? That is the self-referencing that is so important for chess players, because you're 100% right. With the competitive era that it is right now, it is very difficult. It is so fundamentally ingrained in us to look at ratings, to look at titles, prices, etc., that we forget that self-referencing changes the whole game, because it doesn't matter then who's sitting in front of me as long as I care about my mastery and my orientation of what I consider as growth. Which is also why I oftentimes recommend that sports psychology sessions are to look at things from this different perspective. They are for your child to become more self-aware of what it is that has become so, naturally coming to them that might actually be holding them back in a way. So these are just some things to consider. There's, like I said, this is a very open exchange of ideas kind of discussion.
Yeah. Thanks, Saloni, on that perspective. It
Of
will
course.
definitely help.
Yeah. Okay. How many players also feel like, oh my God, especially, the teenagers, that I have to manage my friends, I have to manage my school, I have to also manage chess training, I also have to do exercise. There's so much to do. How do I balance all of that? I think many of us might relate to that, because for like children, there's just so much on the plate. And they're like, okay, there's so much. I'm feeling burnt out. And burnout, if it is looked at from, just simple goal achievement, here the concept of goal achievement of what I was saying comes in very handy. And actually having discussions with your children, right? One fine day you sit with them and just ask them, let's forget all the output. What are your goals of learning? What do you consider as growth? What do you consider as development? And you map out all the areas. Maybe your child is in whatever standard in school. Maybe they are, of course, in chess, they are in other sports, they're also having a social circle. Don't skip the personal aspects as well. What do you consider as growth? Maybe your child will say, this is what they'll usually begin with. I want to get 90 on 100. I want to score, I don't know, 85%, whatever. That's where you have to step in and say, no, 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 that's not what I mean. What I mean is, how will you know that you've learned something valuable? Because the number is not going to help you. How are the skills you're using also going to help you outside? They have not thought about that. I can guarantee you many of these children have not thought about that, because the culture that we live in is very outcome driven. So maybe this is an exercise that I often recommend to like the people I work with to do with their parents. And that gets both the parent and the children on the same wavelength in terms of what it is that the child is hoping to achieve. And also for the child to understand, oh, my parent is not really only thinking about the outcome. They value my progress in different areas just as much. So the point of psychological safety that I mentioned earlier, that also then becomes more clear to them, that they feel very okay to fail in front of you. And that comes as a very big relief, because knowing that, okay, sometimes things will not go my way and I have my parent to fall back on, not because you're not like you're helpless, but just as, okay, like there's a wall behind me, even if I'm pushed back against it, is a very good feeling for a child as they're growing up. So, having this discussion and mapping out actually those areas of growth that are nothing to do with the outcome is an excellent exercise that I often recommend. Just out of curiosity, has anyone in this call done something like that, or engaged in something? I'd be very happy to know.
Sorry, Saloni. If nobody else says,
Oh, of course, go on.
I just wanted to add one thing. There is these days kids, and especially where I see is kids are very different. Where earlier kids would get the pressure of the outcome. Today, you'll be surprised how many kids come back and ask, "Why am I doing this? There's no output of this that's going to
Mm-hmm.
help me in the long term."
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little different with some kids, but I do agree that the output pressure once gone off and the understanding definitely helps. So I try and do that with the kids, but I they surprise me sometimes by going the first step themselves, saying that why do I need to do this? How does this help me in the longer term?
You're 100% right. That is very cool. I think the Gen Z and the Gen Alpha, because I still fall in just a little bit before that. So maybe they're doing these cool things and good for them. But one thing that is also to be considered, like you said, okay, they're not looking at the output, but then what are they looking at, right? Okay, good that they're moving away from that point of view, one step ahead of us. But then, are they strategically looking at a good amount of direction that they want to go in, which focuses on the process of things? That can be used as a guiding question area.
I'm guessing that will be a totally different topic, but
Yeah.
and I've been trying to read up a little bit on it. Not very structured reading, but instant gratification, right? These days, and it started to influence us as adults as well. But
Yeah,
kids are the ones that easily get influenced by it as instant gratification. So uh,
definitely.
they, they want to have something at the end. Maybe not a rating, not maybe not a medal or a trophy, but they want something to feel that they've got what they want, right? So
Yeah,
that kind of part is, I think, what they these days mostly look for, and
yeah,
it's a totally different, like I said, a session or a topic on how you can avoid that.
definitely. No, thank you for sharing that. And before I open the floor to any like on the spot questions, there's one thing I want to say. Okay, yes, this session was designed from the perspective of sports psychology for chess, but sports psychology or performance psychology also allows you to look at yourself as a complete person with resources that extend beyond just the scope of chess. It's domain abstract. The skills that you build when you're working with a sports psychology consultant, it's not something that you have to, show up every day to. These skills, and especially the way I approach this, is and this is a very funny way to describe it, but I'll still always tell it like that. I want to run myself out of a business. I want to work with children such that they don't have to work with me after a certain point because they've become that independent that they can do that for themselves. So these skills, after a certain point, become frameworks. The teaching and working with the right professional then becomes very important because when you teach a person how to arrive at their own solutions, that framework is carried throughout different things. Like, if the person knows how to find their solutions, if they're thinking for themselves, even if they go to their school, now they know how to think for themselves. That's a whole different thing. And that I think makes sports psychology and performance psychology a very crucial part of growth because performance is everywhere. Performance is not just chess, how they show up every day, how they just carry themselves throughout the day. What are those mental skills that are required for them to just live a very fulfilled and full life? When you look at it like that, I recommend just do like 10-15 sessions. This is a matter of 2 to 3 months where your child gets that time and space to explore, learn, and then they leave with learning that framework that makes them feel so empowered. So, yeah, that's my perspective, and I'm very open to answering any questions that we may have. I'm happy to extend this session by 5-10 minutes, so don't worry about the time. And thank you, ST, for saying that.
Yeah, and Saloni, do you have any recommendations on good reading as well that we can do that can help us?
Yes, great you asked that. First answer to that, The Inner Game of Tennis by Timothy Galway. Super book to understand how to differentiate between what is working as your expert of the domain as opposed to someone who evaluates and judges. I don't want to spoil it for you, but it is a super book recommended, which makes sports psychology very digestible and not those hefty jargon-laden words. Simple understanding. I would recommend you read that first and then recommend it to your child. Another book, The Barefoot Coach by Paddy Upton. So those who don't know, Paddy Upton was actually the sports psychology consultant who worked with Gukesh for his world championship match. So he has some excellent points on how he wants to, or like how he approaches mental performance work. He was also working with the Indian cricket team before that. So that's also another tangent if you're in cricket. That is also an excellent book I recommend. So these two books, you just understand how there's so much more to mental performance. You know, mental performance is not therapy. Let me clarify that. Mental performance is absolutely not therapy. This is purely performance orientation. So you look at it from a lot of resource mobilization, understanding your own strengths kind of perspective. But yeah, these two books, I think these are great and will benefit a lot.
Thank you for the recommendation, Saloni.
Of course. Please feel free to unmute and answer ask any questions.
10 years old kid usually, even though if it is capable,
Mhm.
so to beat IM and GM, they will scare when you get when they see the pairing. How can we make them come out of that
Yeah,
the fearless?
yeah. Thank you for asking that. One of the first things, important to understand where the fear is coming from. Is this fear? Fear can extend two ways, okay? Fear can extend either externally, relating to your opponent's characteristics. Second, fear can extend internally if they are not confident about their own skills. So that translates either, out of control things, which is opponent characteristics, or confidence related issues that are inwards. Understanding this discussion or like this, differentiation between the two gives us areas to work on. Because imagine if it is outward and you're working on confidence, it's not helpful. You need to understand what the basis of that is. So actually ask your child, hey, what are you afraid of? Do you think you are not capable? Or do you think your opponent is too strong that it escapes your capability? Another thing to understand is I love to tell this story to the people I work with. Understand what fear is. We often think fear is a signal to our brain that, oh, something is wrong, I don't have XYZ or whatever. Biologically, fear actually prepares you and protects you. Go back to like caveman times when the threats were like, being hunted or natural calamities or struggling for food. Fear is the mechanism that made you go into fight or flight. Humans have evolved with time, but that biological basis of fight or flight has not escaped us. So they perceive, our brain, our biology perceives higher rated opponents as threats, which is why fear is a biological response. Simply even explaining this to them and understanding that, hey, that very thing that was designed to protect me, how can it go against me? That changes the whole game. That's the first part of it. And then the second line of discussion, which I asked, is it outward or inward? Asking these questions and then working on, okay, whether this confidence or whether this is related to external stuff, to then, if it's controllable versus uncontrollable, asking those guided questions. Okay, if your opponent's prep strength rating is out of your control, what is in your control? Then they'll say, it's my preparation, what moves I find, XYZ. Those are good guiding questions. I hope that helps a little bit. Okay. Do we have any other questions? Any final thoughts? Okay. Let me just wait for 30 more seconds. Otherwise, I'm very happy that everyone joined today. I hope this was helpful. And please do consider, like, not just with me, whoever consultant you see fit, but for the growth of your children, to work with a sports psychology consultant.
Salini, no questions, but thank you for your time and thank you for the inputs. I'm sure they are definitely helpful, differently for different people, but appreciate your time and energy on a weekend to
Of course.
share this with us.
Of course. Thank you for attending. Okay, if we do not have any more questions, I'll be happy to conclude this session and I'll send the YouTube recording all to everyone who has registered so that you can watch it again on your own time. Thank you so much for attending, and I hope today was good for you. Take care.
Thank you and
Yeah.
enjoy the weekend. Yeah, take care. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye, everyone.